Howdy folks, and welcome back to another funnel video. This time, we're going to be tackling all the achievements in V Rising. Now, why, you may ask, am I looking at the achievements and not the trophies, seeing as how, we can play V Rising on the PS5? Well, it's an incredibly easy reason. Because I had it on the PC first. It's as simple as that. So V Rising is an incredibly fun top-down vampire game where you make your own castle, kill special bosses to unlock equipment, and become a true vampire lord. There are 49 achievements in total, which usually isn't that hard, except that there are 5 achievements that require you to beat specific portions of the game on brutal difficulty. You must start the game on brutal and stick with brutal. From my research before starting, you forfeit these achievements if you switch difficulties around. So instead of doing 2 playthroughs, I'm just gonna do 1, that being brutal. This being the case though, this is also my second attempt at this. So I'm gonna be totally honest, I'm going totally solo, which means no matter what I do, I only affect my world and no one else will be joining or so on and so forth. Because of this, I turned off PvP, which allows me to teleport wherever and with whatever I want. And if you haven't played Brutal before, is brutal. I mean, so much so that the first time I played it, when I was doing the first recordings for this, I was not enjoying the game. So I changed a few settings around to give myself a little extra health and damage in these settings prior to the actual world creation. And before I hear anyone complaining, going, well, you aren't doing the real challenge and blah, blah, blah. Look, here's the deal. The developers gave us this ability, and I still absolutely got my shit rocked several times. So don't worry, I still suffered. It's just a little less so. But with all that yapping out of the way, we have 49 achievements up for grabs, so let's throw that number up here on the board and begin. We start out, as every good game does, with character creation. And V Rising does give us some level of creative freedom. Not a huge amount, but enough that it is pretty fun. Deciding to take a break from killing vampires in Skyrim, Constantine joins us in V Rising with her signature jet black hair and purple eyes. And with Constantine created, we begin our adventure in a dead crypt, having finally awoken. Our first goal is to get out of Dodge and start causing mass untold amount of chaos. 'Cause, vampires, we got to. We start with the basic tutorial of how movement and combat works. But I know you all. You care for those sweet, sweet achievements. And fear not, we will be putting ourselves up on the board here in just a moment. See, I promised I'm no liar. Our first achievement is awarded just at the end of the tutorial. A whole new world is obtained for entering the Farbane Woods for the first time. This is the first explorable area in the game, and this is actually going to be the first place where we set up a castle, although it will not be the last place where we set up a castle.
An achievement for sure.
So, for those of you who are uninitiated in V Rising, this is a resource collection action game, or something around that. You'll collect resources to beat bosses, to get to new locations, to get better equipment, to beat better bosses, and so on and so forth. The thing is, the game does a really good job of not letting you rush to the best equipment. All progression is blocked by the bosses or the V-Blood carriers. But, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Don't worry though, I will show you the death of every V-Blood carrier. For now though, we are just trying to survive and get resources before we get our next achievement. And that next achievement pops soon after. A first taste is awarded for actually doing the whole vampire thing and sucking the blood from a living entity. That entity dies when you suck its blood, just a little FYI. This sort of happens when you exsanguinate something. And yes, by the way, that sentence was written just so I could say the word exsanguinate. Another huge and major aspect in V Rising is the ability to create your own castle. This also happens to be our next achievement, the Lord of the Land, for placing our first castle heart. Pretty cool how I just pivoted like that, right? Hey, got that. Yeah, alright, I'm sorry. Anyways, look, I'm hamming it up because I suck at building and decorating. I'm a function over form sort of guy, or whatever. That's at least what I tell myself when I fail at making anything look half decent. So, remember those V-Blood carriers I'd mentioned before? Well, in Brutal difficulty, the game gives them more armor, damage, and extra attacks. So, that's fun. Some of them are wandering bosses, like Alpha here, while others are stationary and are found at specific locations. They can all be tracked once you achieve a certain gear level, and upon their defeat, you gain different types of knowledge. These can range from spell ability points, tech upgrades, cosmetics, and potentially even powers. In our case, the very first V-Blood boss I meet, and subsequently murder, is Alpha the White Wolf. This is not a hard boss. It's really not meant to be. But with its death, we receive our next achievement, the first of many, for defeating our very first V-Blood carrier. Oh, and we learned the ability to change it to a wolf, so that's pretty cool. And speaking of that wolf form, there are several different forms you'll actually be able to take on throughout the entirety of the game, though the most important will probably be the wolf for movement speed and the bat for flight. Once you transform for the first time, the achievement, A Creature of Many Forms, will pop. And this is how the game loop goes. You kill V-Blood bosses to gain better equipment, you harvest resources to make said better equipment, so you can ultimately kill better bosses to, hopefully, in the end, kill Dracula. Going through every minute would be pretty insane, and also well over 20 hours, so I'll just hit highlights as necessary, focusing on V-Blood bosses and achievements, since, that is what this video is about. Our next V-Blood boss is Keely the Frost Archer, and this boss, oh, how I despise her. She single-handedly kicked my butt so many freaking times. And you guys can see it right here. I nearly choked it again. This is in part because I could never actually get the timing of her attacks down right. The worst was the multi-shot that froze you on hit. But with her death, we obtained several necessary upgrades and a Frost skill perk.
I feel stronger.
Not everyone hates vampires. Well, okay, yes they do, but the sound of coins clinking in someone's hand at least makes some willing to at least stop and chat. These shady merchants actually saved my butt a few times with having necessary items or research books to complete sets of armor. If you want to trade with actual villagers though, you'll need silver, not copper coins, and a disguise, but more on that later. Once we actually trade for the first time, the achievement, The Allure of Coin, will pop. Our next V-Blood is Rufus the Foreman, and this guy also caused me just massive amounts of pain. You're probably going to hear me say that a lot, because the bosses are very difficult. Anyway, on more than one occasion, I had to actually run from him or I was just flat out killed. Half the reason I even fought Keely first was to upgrade my armor because I was getting smacked around so often. And, again, I nearly chucked this attempt, but I was able to squeak out a victory, although, let's be honest, it was mostly luck over anything else. I probably should have died on this one, too.
New knowledge acquired.
While mining for some copper, I came across a rather interesting purple mushroom. Unlike the other red mushrooms, this one will make you get all wonky and you'll go for a nice little trip. We also get the achievement, oh no, for eating the wrong mushroom. This next achievement was weirdly bugged, and I'm not totally sure why it didn't pop originally. Larger Pockets is awarded when you equipped any bag for the first time. As you can see, I already had a bag equipped, but I had to take it off and re-equipped it for it to pop, so just a little heads up on that. Our next V-Blood is Errol the Stonesmith. Man, I won't lie, he was an absolute pushover. It wasn't hard to dodge his attacks, and the minions he summoned were just workers. Unlike Rufus and Keely, who'd spawn archers and were able to hit me at a distance, the workers just sort of ran at me, so it was easy to dispatch them. All I had to do was keep spamming my spells and hitting him at range with a crossbow, which pretty much solidified the win for me. On the bright side, the ability he uses that ignites in a line is probably one of my favorite spells in the game, and I use it for a long time for its ability to hit multiple enemies at once. The following achievement is incredibly easy to get. Instant gratification is awarded when you use a vampire teleporter for the first time, whether you choose to use it or you die and need to use it. Remember, due to the settings I implemented in the beginning, I can use this teleporter no matter what I have in my inventory. If you're playing solo, make sure you do this. It'll save you just so much travel time. While you're in multiplayer though, just note that this may be turned off and thus you'll be unable to teleport if you have certain items in your inventory. Grayson the Armor is up next. He is going to unwillingly teach us how to make whetstones, which we need for some progression. Here's the thing though, so far I've shown you just me beating bosses, but we're on Brutal and I think it's important that you guys see me get my butt kicked, so let me show you a time when, I had to run because of my terrible planning. So these spikes that he lays on the ground are supposed to be gotten rid of using the armor stands. I didn't do that this time. And I also hadn't fully gotten the hang of when and how to use my dash. Needless to say, I got wrecked and absolutely had to bolt. Well, thankfully, on attempt number 2, which I was actually able to do in that same night, I was able to beat him. As I kid you not, I learned about the whole armor thing on accident because I just hit the F key. So let's just say, I'm a real gamer. In any case though, with his death, that's another V-Blood down and the whetstones are acquired. I have officially started upgrading my castle from a small wooden outpost to a full-fledged stone castle. Now, this is where room preparation is going to get interesting. See, most of every crafting station has 2 requirements. One being that it's under an enclosed roof, which helps increase its speed efficiency, while if it has the correct flooring in the room, the material requirements for creating an object are lowered. So most machines also fall into a different category of flooring. In this case, the grinder needs to be on workshop flooring. Keep in mind, all this flooring can be unlocked through research. Once you interact with a machine that is on the right flooring and in an enclosed space, you'll get the achievement, Work Smarter, Not Harder. At this point in the game, I've finally unlocked the ability to dominate a human. Now, this requires that you lower their health without, of course, killing them, and then you sort of use your ability and put them under control. At this point, you've got 3 options. Kill them, jail them, or convert them. As I currently don't have the ability or facilities to jail them, I will be converting this fine gentleman into a servant. Now, in PvP, these servants function as guards against raids from other players. In single player, though, you don't really need to worry about raids, nothing attacks your castle, but they are incredibly useful for hunts. Now, these hunts will help you get all sorts of different loot, assuming their level is high enough. This is currently not possible without a throne, but rest assured, later on, I use these loot hunts very, very liberally. We've got a servant in creation, an updated crossbow from normal to merciless, and a desire for more knowledge. So, our next V-Blood holder is Goreswine the Ravager. This is our first real roaming V-Blood carrier. I mean, okay, of course Alpha the Wolf is a roaming V-Blood, but he's the first boss and really meant as a tutorial introduction, so I don't really count him. Apologies to all you Alpha stands out there. In any case, Goreswine is a true roamer, as he will just patrol the map in a certain region rather than being in any one compound. This can make the fight easier or harder depending on where you engage him. I stupidly engaged him during the day. So not only am I dodging all of Goreswine's attacks, I'm also having to flip between the shaded regions so as to not literally burn away my health. While you're watching this fight, let's actually talk a little bit about the color of the V-Blood carrier's name. Now, this goes for all enemies, but it's easier to show here. A red name means that they're above you in level, orange means that they're formidable but possible, yellow is that they're at your level, and gray means you're above theirs. You'll also deal and receive less damage if they have a gray name, while a red name will have you dealing less and taking more. Yellow and orange are a bit more neutral in that regard, in so much that you're not necessarily dealing or taking additional damage. Somehow, through all that chaos and my stupid mistakes, I was able to eke out a win, although I most likely would have died several times over if I hadn't picked up the health orbs. The bosses drop when you get them to half health. Killing Goreswine didn't really get me anything too impressive since I rarely use the graveyard, but that's another V-Blood down for the Master of All achievement. Goreswine is dead, but the roamers don't stop, as a few nights later I find Lydia the Chaos Archer. Now, this is not to be confused with the much nicer, albeit probably still as dangerous, Lydia from Skyrim. You know the difference because their names are spelled differently. Anyway, this fight becomes mostly a crossbow duel, and the frustrating part of the whole fight is the fact that those purple flames linger. So while you're watching out for the projectiles, you also don't want to stand in the very painful purple flames. But with perseverance, a lot of magic, and probably luck with a touch of skill, Lydia falls to our fangs, giving us yet more beautiful knowledge to add to our repertoire.
I feel stronger.
With that red ball above the servant coffin, we know our captured individual has been fully converted into our servant. The old brute is dead. Please welcome Edwin into our ranks. Now, Edwin here isn't really equipped for anything, so I had already gone ahead and made sure he had a full set of armor, weapons, and a ring. And upon giving him all those items, we received the achievement, Your #1 Fan, for fully equipping a servant. The next V-Blood boss, while themselves are kinda useless, actually help with 2 more achievements, obviously one being Master of All, but the other has to do with the form we obtained from it, though that'll be later on. Nibbles here is interesting, as unlike every other V-boss, you actually have to summon him using a specific item at your castle. Nibbles is also a massive pushover. He would be quicker to kill if he didn't keep burying himself and spawning rats that you then had to kill before he reappeared. But with his death, we're one step closer to Dracula, and we also unlock the rat form. Let me show you a really stupid thing I decided to do. See, Tristan here is another Roman boss, but see that skull and red name? Yeah, he's gonna do a boatload of damage while I deal significantly less. My thought, though, was, hey, you know what, I did damage, but stay out of it. If it bleeds, I can kill him. Until I took that one hit, and he dealt nearly a quarter of my health and set me on fire. Thankfully, wolf form is quicker than his running speed. I will be back for Tristan's blood another day. Well, while Tristan is currently out of our reach, you know who isn't? Clive the Firestarter. His pyromania will give us the ability to smelt sulfur and also make explosives, which, while not super useful right now, specifically the sulfur, it will be incredibly later down the line. Now, Clive here is a firebomb expert, using all manner of explosives to cause all sorts of problems. Thankfully, it's relatively easy to not get hit, and like those before him, not counting Tristan because he's a meanie face, he falls to the fangs of Constantine. I'd like you to meet Finn the Fisherman, my next V-Blood and current roadblock. Mr. Finn here has a rather interesting way of fighting, as he uses fish and a massive sea serpent to, let's just say, cause problems. I truly was not prepared the first time I fought him, and he nearly killed me. Thankfully, I was able to run away, heal, and regroup. His summons were doing a great job of keeping me preoccupied, so next time around, I'm going to have to prioritize getting them out of the way. Also, the longbow just probably wasn't the best choice of weapon for this fight. After a quick regroup and heal, I'm able to rally and deal with Finn the only way I know how, by making fish sticks of his friends and turning him into the main course. With his demise, we gain access to the fishing rod, which will be useful here in just a little moment.
I feel stronger.
As I said, Finn's death gave us access to the fishing rod. Now, fish are an incredibly useful resource, as they'll be used to help feed prisoners, but their bones are also used in some very useful alchemical potions. Well, when we use the rod for the first time and catch a fish, we're awarded with the Gone Fishing achievement. The grind don't stop as we come face to face with our next V-Blood holder, Nikolaus the Fallen. Now, he's a special sort of fella, because he's going to give us access to an achievement with something from his death. But let's not jump too far ahead of ourselves. He has a pretty easy attack pattern, and while not remotely a pushover, he is still relatively simple. You'll also notice I'm using potions for the first time. I did not have the ability to make potions yet, but I was able to buy one off the shady dealer. His death will give us access to a tier 3 spell slot, of which I will explain here in just a moment.
Knowledge acquired.
And that moment is now. Most V-Blood carriers, when you kill them, give you access to a tier 1, 2, or 3 spell slot from one of the 6 schools of potential magic. Up until this point, we'd gotten tiers 1 and 2, but with Nikolaus, he gave us our very first 3rd tier level spell. These are considered our ultimate abilities, and I chose to go with the Spider. Using this ability for the first time unlocks the ultimate power achievement for using the ultimate ability. I was working on castle redesign and trying to figure out how the stairs worked in making a new level to the castle, Well, the first time you actually place stairs, the achievement Vampire Rising pops. We're getting close to the end of Act 1, and I've plateaued in what we were able to accomplish. As I said before, the game does a good job in gatekeeping progression. So Quincy, the Bandit King, is the end of Act 1, and he unlocks the ability to smelt iron, which is used in the next tier of armor and weapons. With that, it's time to clean up the last of the V-Bloods in Act 1. The first is Polara the Feywalker. Honestly, nothing too special here, and what we learn from her isn't super useful either, though that's only because I'm not much of a decorator.
Taste of knowledge.
Our final V-Blood for Act 1, outside of Quincy, is Kodia the Ferocious Bear. Now, Kodia does a good deal of AoE damage and will even spawn bears in, but so long as you keep your distance when necessary, you'll be fine. Also, I recommend using the Spear, as it was a very solid choice since it does 25% more damage to creatures. Kodia's death gives us bear form, which we need to actually go and fight Mr. Quincy. Not because we'll use the bear form to fight him, but because we need it to actually enter his lair. So why did we need bear form? Well, Quincy here decided he wanted to barricade himself in his little fortress, and unlike in other pop culture references of vampires, we don't need no invitation to enter. By turning into a bear, we can storm the fort and start causing a massive amount of chaos. We butcher our way through the fortress until we finally come across the Bandit King himself. Now, Quincy's our first end act boss, and because of that, he's got a hell of a health pool and lots of different attacks. For whatever reason, either I was timing my dash wrong, or I just couldn't read the incoming attacks, which makes my Dark Souls runs probably going to be very disappointing and painful. His charges would hit me nearly every time. This grew to be rather frustrating, if I'm being honest, as I would think I was doing well and then get absolutely train wrecked. Well, sadly, I was unable to actually escape the arena this time and got bodied. Quincy 1, Constantine 0. Not all hope was lost, though. When you die, the only things you drop are your inventory. Your blood type and buffs persist even through death, which is so incredibly helpful. I was able to respawn at a super close teleporter. This allowed me to get back into the fight relatively quickly, and I must admit this was a great addition to the game from a single player experience. Nothing like getting wrecked and then having to just redo everything. Well, on round 2, it seemed I was able to hold out a little bit longer and was able to kill Quincy in the end. Not only was he the last V-Blood for Act 1, but we also received 2 achievements: completion of Act 1 and completion of Act 1 on brutal difficulty. While the map is completely open from the beginning of the game, there's very little reason to go to new regions until you're of the right level, because otherwise you're just going to get smacked around. Well, with Quincy dead, it's now time to head to our next region. The Dunley Farmlands is where I'll end up moving my castle to be more central to the entirety of the map, as well as where Act 2 will take place. When we enter the region for the first time, the achievement A Fox in the Henhouse will pop. We are officially in the Dunley Farms, and as I mentioned before, I ended up moving the castle here. I wish I had some of that footage, but I have a sneaking suspicion I didn't actually record that session, as I was just figuring out how to actually move the castle, and then realized that you actually had to basically rebuild the whole thing, so apologies for that. But with our base of operations squarely centered in the map, we now turn towards what needs to get done. With access to an iron mine, we'll be spending a lot of time there getting as much of the metal as possible. But we must also begin working toward Act 2's V-Blood carriers. And the first one appears to be a nice old lady. And that nice old lady was easily found. Of course, after using iron to upgrade a few of our weapons. You can't kill an old lady with nothing. As you can see, with iron weapons, we now have access to a second weapon ability, giving us more ways to slaughter our prey. Beatrice the Tailor was an interesting boss fight. This is due to her kind of just running away from the fight until she reaches half health. Then she decides she's tired of getting wailed on and transforms into the demon lord you now see. The fight started to get pretty hairy, honestly, due to the militia folks shooting me and the fire that started to appear either from Beatrice or the fire archers. My one saving grace was that the militia were also willing to turn their attention on the massive demon in their town. In the end, thankfully, we were able to defeat her and take her knowledge, unlocking another important resource refinement station, the Loom. And about a minute later, we're getting our next achievement on a pale horse for riding a horse for the very first time. This may be one of the only times I ride a horse in this entire playthrough. It's castle upgrading time, and the best way to start is to become mildly self-sufficient. So I started planting a garden. Once I have the pots placed, I go ahead and plant an oak tree sapling. Doing so then gets me the achievement of Vampire with a Hobby. One of the most important mechanics in V-Rising is your blood type and blood quality. Up until this point, I'd been just sort of hoping to find a high blood quality person and just sort of get by with what I could find. That ends now, though, as I look towards trying to create jail cells. Now, these cells will allow you to capture a specific person, and so long as you can keep them alive, you can tap them for blood. To unlock prison cells, though, I first gotta kill Vincent the Frostbringer, and for the record, I was going to fight him when Christina the Sun Priestess also decided to appear. I nearly fought them both at the same time, but made the rather wise and intelligent decision to wait for Vincent to pass, and then I just hunted down Christina first. Not particularly sure why I chose her first, but
Shining blessings.
Christina was not a difficult V-boss to fight. Her main attacks consisted of creating holy light rays and shooting magic shots, as well as also sending out minions to try to kill me. She did have a slightly annoying habit of constantly trying to heal herself, but that was able to be easily dealt with so long as you, and in this case I was, able to put out significant amounts of damage. With her dead and knowledge acquired, it was time to move on to the main course. Vincent was more of a problem. While I was still able to beat him on my first try, brutal difficulty makes any ice-based V-boss a major pain in the butt. On normal difficulties or on easier ones, if they hit you with an attack, you would just get chilled and slow down. A second hit would freeze you. In brutal difficulty, though, this is not the case. If you are hit, then you are instantly frozen. And for whatever reason, I had major issues with all of the ice-based bosses because of this. I keep saying, like, oh, I don't know what my issue was. No, I know what my issue was. My ability to read attacks is just garbage. But with that, Vincent dies just like the rest. With Vincent's defeat and his knowledge sucked into my brain, pun fully intended, we were now able to build the prison cells. So now just to get a prisoner and capture them so I could stick them for their blood. Our next V-Blood victim is finally Tristan. It is time to repay an old debt. I probably could have done better on this fight, all things considered, but I was still, relatively speaking, new to the game, and especially new to the combat and the movement and all of that jazz. As you can see, I nearly whiffed it again, which will happen a lot. Let's also just not talk about how he had no health and I absolutely whiffed multiple kill shots. So, anyway, his death brought me the ability to make Greater Blood Essence, which was an upgrade material that I would be needing for many future endeavors. And speaking of those endeavors, the Greater Blood Orb gave me access to the Castle Throne. Now, this throne is what would then allow me and you to send out servants on raids to collect materials. The system's actually pretty ingenious. There are multiple locations on the map that you can send your servants to pillage for all sorts of different materials. This is super useful. Their success chance is based on their gear score versus the gear level of the location you're trying to assault. Their chance of success can be increased by giving them better gear and sending them into locations that they have an affinity for. Each servant will have 2 perks. The first one is based around where the actual servant was acquired from. So Damien, in this case here, was taken from the Dunley farmlands. So any loot she secures in the Dunley farmland area will be increased by 20%. The second perk is much more important for difficulty purposes, and it is based on the blood type they have. Since Damien had rogue blood, she has a tracking expertise perk, meaning that it reduces the difficulty by 100 when being sent into an area with this perk. You can find all of this information on the wiki, but needless to say, it's important that you send your servants where they are best suited. In the case of this video though, while I obviously won't show it, keep in mind I basically would log in at least every 24 hours, as that's how long a hunt took, like a good hunt, and I would just keep sending them out and taking the things that they picked up. Because yes, it even keeps track of when you're offline. Thank God. With the death of Tristan and me making some pretty steady progress, I got cocky. Well, brutal difficulty was here to take me down a peg. The next V-Blood I tried to take on, as you guys can see here, is Maja the Dark Savant. Well, how do I put this? Needless to say, I was not remotely ready for this fight. As, I didn't even have any potions active. And, well, she took me to task, and I had to run away or risk dying. So, Maja kicked our butts, and I had to start thinking a little more strategically. It was time to finally start leveraging blood types using the prisoner system. I went out into the world, and while I couldn't find what would later become my staple, I was able to find a 69% rogue blood. Honestly, not bad for my first outing. So, we put the archer under control and lock her in the prison cell. We then, using a glass vial, tap her blood, and obtain the achievement Blood Donor, as well as also now being able to basically transfer and hold all sorts of blood types. I'd like to draw your attention to my current dominated human. This man is and will be the backbone of the entire playthrough. I found him with a 99% brute blood quality. He has no name, I never asked it, but I believe he deserves one, and for that, may I introduce you all to Philip, the man who will single-handedly feed us a few achievements, as well as his high-quality blood. With Philip's blood secure, it's now time to try Maja Part 2. If you're unsure as to what brute blood actually does, it gives you health every time you hit an enemy with a weapon, as well as increased attack speed, healing received in general, and gives you a 1 gear level boost. Overall, outside of Scholar's blood, I found it my favorite multi-purpose blood. Anyway, back to the Maja fight. So this time around, I was much better prepared. As you can see, I actually have potions activated. And, you know, I just sort of had a better idea of what was going to happen. She still got quite a good smacks in, especially with the flying books and weird ink monsters, but I was able to squeak out a victory and obtain the next level in research. Pretty quickly after the Maja fight, with still a good 15 minutes left on my potions, lots of blood in my reserves, and it still being night, I went to take on the next V-Blood carrier, Leandra the Shadow Priestess. Guys, I'm gonna be pretty honest with you. I have no notes about Leandra. This was one of those fights where it just sort of happened. Went in, took some hits, gave more, killed her. She was not really necessarily a memorable boss, which is kind of sad to say. At this point, I really started to expand my castle out, adding multiple different rooms dedicated to the different machines used. Here, I'm currently working on making my tailor area. Now, I don't have the flooring for the tailor yet, but simply having the room in and of itself is a good start. This is also around the point that I stopped recording every second of gameplay, as of this point in V Rising, kind of I'd say around the mid game, and obviously, of course, very much into the late game, V Rising is just a lot of grinding for materials, and so that would have just been A, boring to watch, and B, it also saved quite a bit on storage space. And speaking of the tailor area, this is where we will actually get our next achievement, Dress to Impress. And I'm not talking about the weird Roblox game people seem to be absolutely fascinated by. No, in this case, you must create a cosmetic item, in this case the ball gown, and then place it into the cosmetic slot. Now, I actually made the mistake of first just slotting it into my normal chest spot. Make sure you actually put it in the cosmetic slot. Next up on the V chopping block is... Alright, well, it was supposed to be Krieg the Undead General, but it seems Meredith the Bright Archer wanted to go first. Her fight was actually pretty simple. It was mostly the same sort of attacks that the Frost and Chaos Archer had, but just slightly easier telegraphed. I mean, not that that stopped me from getting hit multiple times. As you can see, though, she had an orange name, meaning that she was a more difficult foe based off of gear score, but somehow I was still able to take her down in a pretty timely manner. Now, it's time to deal with the boss I actually came here for, Krieg. And, oh boy, is he a hell of a boss. Now, Krieg here has a yellow name, meaning we're matched in gear score. You'd think, me just having dealt with Meredith, I would have been good. Complete opposite. I got absolutely smoked by this guy so many times. So he has a few moves that really messed with me. The first was a random charge forward. I don't know why the telegraph was so hard for me to notice, but it was. Second, and this one did a boatload of damage, he would summon skeletons to aid him in his fight. It seems simple enough. Well, at certain points he would place condemn on them, and if they got close to you, they would explode for like a quarter of your health. I would be doing great, and then not notice one of the kamikaze skeletons barrel down, and it would blow up in my face. And the thing is, I didn't die to him just once. I died multiple times, and had to run away quite a few times as well. He really did turn out to be my very first roadblock in this game. So after losing to him no less than 4 times, I took a step back and did a bit more grinding and just went to take a break from getting my shit rocked. During this time, I maxed out the first tier of research, that of the research desk. Completing all the research and interacting with the desk awards the Collector of Forgotten Lore 1 achievement. There will be 2 more achievements in the same vein, no pun intended. I decided it was now time to take on Krieg again, but Little Miss Bright Archer was blocking my path. So now I had to kill her, so that I could actually get to the general. But as with all things in life, nothing ever goes according to plan, and Krieg decided, or got tired of waiting for me, as he stormed out of his arena and actually ended up killing Meredith himself. I was admittedly hoping that they would just sort of whittle each other down so that I could go in, get the killing blow, get Krieg's knowledge, and move on with my day. That did not happen. Krieg walked out and just absolutely wiped the floor with her. So now I had a Krieg in an arena that I was not willing to fight in. So I was able to kite him back to his original arena, as it was just a much more open space. I had a lot more maneuverability. This time, though, I was ready for all his fancy bullshit and the kamikaze skeletons. On my, I think this was 5th attempt at this fight, I was finally able to beat him. After killing Krieg, the night was young and I still had my potions active, so I thought, why not try to take on another boss? This boss was interesting, as it was Bane the Shadowblade. See, Bane, unlike every other V-boss, is technically hidden. He doesn't have a health bar that you can see from anywhere, and even when you scroll over, like when you have your mouse over it, you're not going to see it. So to find him, and the only way to do this is to track him and then look for the disguised individual that you had just seen. The other thing is, he won't aggro unless you strike first, so make that first strike count. The fight itself is pretty interesting, with him going all Shadow Clone Jutsu while firing all sorts of other Shadow Bolts at you. Now, while it's an interesting fight, it can be a little tedious with all the Shadow Clones, but it was still a good one nonetheless. Killing him, though, is incredibly important, as it gives us access to our next form, the human form, which will be needed for an achievement very soon, as well as you'll need it in the end game so that you can actually buy certain items with the last type of currency, the gold sun coins. Our rampage of V-Blood bosses continues with Grethel the Glassblower. It was a fun little boss fight, and while it looked like I was getting my butt handed to me, rest assured it was all part of my plan. See, I lured her into a false sense of superiority just to take her out right there in the end. It definitely was not luck related, and I didn't absolutely almost whiff the fight. That being the case, with her death, we also learn how to make glass, which will be very important later on. What's interesting about playing on brutal difficulty, though, is that some bosses will just kick my butt 5 ways to Sunday, while others, sort of a little bit in this case, will just go down easily. I really do appreciate a difficulty that's hard, but not overtly punishing for the just enjoyment and sake of being punishing. We're on the way to fight the next V-Blood carrier so that I can finally upgrade my armor. Frostmaw the Mountain Terror will allow us to create thick leather, giving us access to the next tier level in the armor. While on the way to actually find him, we entered the region for the first time, awarding the Footsteps in the Snow achievement for venturing into the Hallowed Mountains area. And speaking of the old devil, we end up being able to find him. He's got quite a few fun attacks, and like all the other frost-based V-bosses, I struggle with being frozen on the spot all the damn time. Through a mix of poor positioning and really not knowing any of his movesets, I just get absolutely domed. I get smacked down. I don't think I even got him down half health. But fear not, for there was always the second attempt. Yeah, this one didn't go well either. I nearly had him. Look at his health bar. I nearly had him. He had a goddamn sliver of health left, and I whiffed it. It was bound to happen at some point, but I mean, come on. I was so infuriated at this point. I think I may have just rage quit. Realizing I was going to need something else and still needing thick leather, I thought, why not go to the shops? Well, in Dunley Farmlands, you can trade silver coins for all sorts of different things. The first thing I bought was a research book, but I did go and pick up some thick leather afterwards, though it wasn't enough to actually do anything with, so that was definitely my mistake. Grabbing the book awarded me the Master of Disguise achievement for trading with a merchant while the human disguise was active, so, you know, that was a plus. It's now time to investigate another area on the map, the ruins of Morcham. At first, this was a sort of meh area for me, but there are a few V-bosses in the area, and you'll actually be fighting Dracula nearby. Spoilers. But, most importantly, I'll be able to start taking on the Rift events. I'll talk more about these later, but rest assured they are incredibly useful for endgame weapons and equipment. This being the case, the first time we actually enter the ruins, we receive the achievement, the Forgotten Reaches. Let's actually talk about these Rift events. They occur every 40 minutes, and you can keep track of them by using the Eye of Morcham. Prior to creating a world, you can actually choose how long the events are active for. I left it on the standard 20 minutes because, if I'm being honest, I just didn't even know what they were. These Rift events come in two different variants, Level 1 and Level 2. Level 1 requires a gear score of 57 and higher, and you'll be awarded with normal Stygian shards, as well as potentially blue ancestral weapon shards. The Tier 2, on the other hand, is a gear level 80 and above, with you getting greater Stygian shards, and the ability to get purple ancestral weapons, or even legendary shards. Now, the ancestral weapon shards are unusable until you actually beat Act 2. I bring this up now because I attempted my first rift, but I actually ran out of time before taking on the main crystal, and thus was unable to get the achievement that coincides with finishing your first rift. So, rest assured though, we come back for it later. After getting a bunch more combat practice from the rift and doing much more housekeeping, or castle keeping, one of the two, it was now time to face down Frostmaw once again. I'd also looked at the wiki on how to understand some of his attack patterns a little more, I won't lie to you. I won't say this has dramatically helped me in any way, but hey, you know, whatever got stuck in my head helped, because on this attempt, I was able to take him down. Not after getting hit with way too many frost bolts, though. Thankfully, we now had access to the thick leather and could make our next tier in armor. With Frostmaw dead, I did the only viable thing I could do. I kept going after V-bosses. This was a admittedly bad tendency of mine, that since the potions lasted an hour, I would just keep going on a steamroll of bosses until I hit one that had too high of a gear score, or I just got absolutely walloped. I'm not gonna say this was the smartest idea, especially considering the situation I was in now where I had the ability to make better armor, but for the most part it worked out in my favor. In that case, the next victim was General Elena of the Hollow. She was found roaming in the ruins, and she was a pretty fun fight as well. The most annoying part of her moveset, though, had to be the ice pillar that she would summon. She could get right on top of it, and then you wouldn't be able to do any damage to her until you killed the pillar, all the while she's shooting all sorts of ice projectiles at you. And you know how I feel about V-bosses with ice. Also, huge shout out to that brute that just sort of barreled in and took out a majority of her ice pillar. That probably saved the fight in my favor. The V-Blood death spree continues with Terra the Geomancer. Now, I gotta say, it's been a while since I had what I would consider a quote-unquote easy fight, but Terra, also peak name, I love it, was pretty easy, I'm not gonna lie. It definitely wasn't a hitless run because, I mean, it's still me playing the game and I got hit on some really dumb attacks that I shouldn't have. But Terra herself and her summons weren't all that difficult. Her main gimmick was transforming into a massive stone golem that, at times, you'd be unable to hurt until the summons were taken care of. Now you could tell which summons had to die due to the pale blue outline, and then that pale blue line that actually connected Terra to the summons. But with her death, that's another boss crossed off the hit list. I really am just not caring at all about the fact that I should go and make new armor. My butt is just going for every V-Blood I can possibly get my hands on. The next poor soul in my rampage is Jade the Vampire Hunter, and, well, it was bound to happen at some point. Someone was going to stop me, but it might as well be the Vampire Hunter. Her death will of course give us access to guns, but to do that, we actually have to kill her. And that proved a little more difficult than I first thought. I won't say she wiped the floor with me, because I absolutely, positively, nearly had her. But, yeah, so she killed me. With the rampage over, that means we can go back to the castle and, don new armor, right? Right? Nope, my stupid butt went, we were so close, let's round 2 this bad boy up. And weirdly enough, to my own credit, I was actually able to pull off the win, albeit, again, it was not an easy fight. I think the hardest part of it all were the spike traps she kept laying. Unlike the armorer, who did the same thing, but there was no special armor this time that we could use to get rid of the caltrops. But thankfully, we were able to pull out that victory, as I said, and now we are finally able to get a hold of those beautiful double pistols. While I tend not to show a lot of the castle work, we did just kill a lot of V-bosses, meaning that we've unlocked quite a bit. Now, most of the things aren't super important, but the one I want to show you is the Altar of Stygian Awakening. This altar gives you permanent passive abilities, and they use these Stygian shards that you collect from the rifts. There are 3 rows. The first row uses the basic Stygian shard, each ability requiring 600. Then the second row uses 600 greater shards, and then the third row uses 1000 greater shards, again, per every ability. Over time, this will be filled out, and while there is no achievement for getting all the passives, simply having them is good enough. With some more potions in our body and a fresh supply of blood, as well as pistols I probably won't use very often, it's time to take on our very first Holy Church member, Raziel the Shepherd. Now, the fight against him isn't anything really to write home about. He uses flashy spells and does have a few annoying light pillars that sweep across the map, but overall, he's a pretty intermediary level boss fight. What's interesting though, is that you have to have a Holy Resist potion active. See, whenever you come across a building that has the shining cross-like structures outside of it, it means that you're going to constantly take holy damage unless you have the Resist potion active. I just thought this was a cool little mechanic that didn't add sort of like unnecessary bloat. As is my custom, the next murder target is General Cassius the Betrayer, and he is a fun, albeit frustrating boss at times. His moveset is pretty generic, except for when he throws his sword at you, making him invincible. That sword is then stuck in the ground, and you have to whittle its health down, and then you throw it back at him, stunning him, letting you get in a ton of damage. This is a really cool mechanic, and to an extent, I do appreciate how the game really does not hold your hand and tell you basically anything on how these bosses operate. As they say in the corporate world, it's time to circle back to that rift achievement. So, a normal rift consists of 2 smaller gems that you destroy by killing all the enemies. This then activates the main crystal, where if it's a tier 1 rift, you'll get a lesser blood soul, and if it's a tier 2, it'll be a primal blood soul. These blood souls take the form of one of a number of different V-bosses with all their abilities. The only main difference I've noticed is that the Blood Souls have dramatically less health. Other than that, you're basically fighting the boss again. Anyways, with the Blood Soul dead and the main crystal destroyed, we are awarded with the Rift Slayer achievement. With all the V-bosses dead in Act 2, we only have one individual left. Octavian, the Militia Captain. This bastard gave me a run for my money. His attacks, for whatever reason, just absolutely confounded and confused me. I truly was at this man's mercy basically this entire fight. The worst was that spinning blade attack that he does when he, well, spins with his blade and shoots out all the smaller spinning blades. In this first fight, I well and truly had no idea what I was doing. It also didn't help that I didn't have my normal blood type active. Rather, I just had some poor warrior schmucks. So, yeah. Attempt 1 ended in failure. I tried again with attempt 2, and just... same mistakes, same bad blood type, same results. What's that thing about insanity again? Honestly, I don't know what I expected. Thankfully, on this fight, I was able to escape before he stuck me 6 feet under. So, with those failures under my belt, I went back to the castle to first get a full set of armor, and reestablish my potions and get ready for attempt number 3. And you know what they say, third time's the charm. Alright, third attempt, and it's already going better than the first 2 because I have my normal blood quality equipped. Alright, weird side tangent. Is it blood quality that you're equipping? What's like the proper nomenclature for this? Is it imbibed, drinked, drunked? I don't know. I teach English. You'd think I would know this. Anyway, sorry. So on the third go around, Octavian gets to meet the business end of Constantine's fangs, and in turn, not only do we complete Act 2, but we also obtain the achievement for doing so, as well as the follow-up for doing it on brutal difficulty. So our next 2 achievements are kind of interesting as they're technically within the same region, but not really. With Octavian dead, we now have access to the Ancestral Forge, which allows us to finally start creating ancestral weapons. But a main component that is necessary is radium ingots. Now, radium and the items that make it can be found in the Gloomrot South area. Entering this for the first time awards the Don't Drink the Water achievement. By the way, the mutant grease that you find here, very important. Make sure you are constantly farming it. The following achievement, March of the Machines, is awarded when you enter the Gloomrot North area. It has the same sort of steampunk vibe as the southern region, it just has way more machines that are trying to murder you. Our first Act 3 V-boss is Ziva the Engineer. Now, while I didn't show it, rest assured, my fine viewers, I got my ass handed to me on a silver platter. She beat me a good couple times before I understood what was happening. For me, the hardest part about her moveset was the constantly changing weapons with different effects. Now, Ziva is an incredibly important stepping stone as she gives us access to the ability to make radium ingots, which in turn allows us to finally make the next tier of weapon, the blue ancestral weapons. Let's talk about my next major roadblock, Domina the Blade Dancer, and yes, that name is absolutely in reference to her particular, masochistic and or sadistic desires for pain. Kids, if you don't know what a dominatrix is, ask your parents and then let me know how long your punishment is. Anyways, she dishes out so much pain and I just kept dying to her over and over. She was incredibly quick, but I'll be honest, rewatching the footage, I'm not particularly sure why I had such a hard time with her, considering the bosses I would be facing in the future, but she was pretty annoying and a nasty roadblock for me. So I clearly need an upgrade, and where better than with our newly acquired ancestral weapon fragments. There are a couple of different ways to get these fragments. You can either get them by random chance doing rift incursions, or with enough Stygian shards, you can actually just buy the shard you want. If you buy from the purple shards market person, there is, according to the wiki, a 15% chance of getting a legendary shard. This will actually be important later. Anyways, outside of legendary shards, the effects and stats are completely randomized within a certain threshold, of course. And upon reforging our first ancestral weapon, we are awarded the achievement, A Weapon from a More Civilized Age. And yes, that is a Star Wars reference. Even with my new weapons, I still get absolutely wrecked by Domina another 2 times. But haha, it's fine, because I have the patience of a slightly annoyed saint, and there's no brick wall too thick or too tall I can't bash my head against to defeat. Side note, this is a lie. I am still terrified of the Soul series. Anyway, on our 5th attempt, the Dominatrix loses her cool, and this time she falls to my blade, or bullets. One more to the kill counter, 1 step closer to Dracula. But now, see, I'm on a steamroll again, and I'll be taking out yet another V-Boss, Angram the Purifier. He's actually pretty easy. Now, it may look like I'm getting hit a lot, because of all the fire, and you'd be right, but the fire didn't do as much damage as my fire. His big gimmick is that at times he'll put up a massive shield, super easy to get around. Just literally go behind him and start wailing on him. Unlike Domina, he is incredibly slow, so this was a nice little palate cleanser of a V-Boss. Alright, it's now time to enter my least favorite region, the Cursed Forest. And yes, the only reason I don't like it is because of the curse. Obviously, I dislike it because of the curse. Anyways, when you enter for the first time, you're awarded the Forbidden Footsteps achievement. To deal with the curse, which, by the way, in case you're unaware, the curse makes your screen slowly go foggy so you can only see a few feet in front of you, but it also makes your mini-map completely fog up, so you can't see where you're going. This is one of the few times I've truly been lost in a video game. The only way to beat the fog is by finding small little wisps or having the Shroud of the Forest equipped. Now, how do you get the Shroud of the Forest? You have to kill Ben the Old Wanderer. And yes, I'm pretty sure that's another Star Wars reference. I despised this fight. Don't get me wrong, Dracula was mind-wrenchingly difficult. The Winged Terror was a pain in the butt, but nothing annoyed me more than this old bastard who would just straight up run away from the fight the entire time. Because of the fog, if you lose him for even a second, it can be difficult to find him again. All the while, you're being attacked by random creatures, and the whole thing is just a massive, colossal pain in the tuchus. The alternate name for this fight, by the way, is Vampire Kills Old Man for Clothing. Thank goodness he's dead, now the forest isn't so terrible. The next boss on the hit list was Ungara the Spider Queen, as she was the gate to getting Silk, which was the second component I needed to make the next tier of armor. Pristine Leather was the other component, but we actually learned how to make that with the death of Ben. Ungara here, though, well, she stopped me pretty much dead in my tracks, and I had to flee from the fight. Let's go get some more achievements before taking her on again. So let's talk about those achievements here. Now, I'm going to be honest. I participated in a little bit of save scumming, and you'll see why here in a moment. The first achievement is called the Perfect Test Subject. This requires that using irradiated gruel, you take a captured human's blood quality to 100%. It seems easy enough. Here's the issue. Irradiated gruel only raises the percentage 1 or 2% points, meaning to do this efficiently, you need to have a 99% blood quality individual, which we have. The downside is that there is a 33% chance that the individual will change into an irradiated monster, and you'll no longer have your prisoner or blood supply. Outside of the achievement, this is, in my opinion, an incredibly stupid mechanic. The penalty far outweighs any positives. I would be cool with it if it raised it like 10 percentage points with a 33% chance, but 1 or 2 for 33% for a 1 in 3 of failure? Come on. Not at all. No. So what I did was made an alternative save, moved it to my desktop, and then, if I failed the irradiated gruel check, I only had to move the alternative save file back and try again. I got lucky though, and was expecting this to take a good hour, but I got it on my second or third attempt. It really only took me about 10 minutes. The second achievement, an Eye for Quality, is obtained when you subdue a human with 100% blood quality. It's super easy, just subdue the prisoner with 100% blood quality you just got, and you'll get the achievement. With that new 100% purity blood, it was time to take on Ungara again. But first, upon imbibing that glorious blood potion, we are awarded the Exquisite Blood achievement. Alright, time to take on the Spider Queen. Go around number 2 was much easier. Her attacks are telegraphed pretty easily, actually, and really all you need to do is keep an eye on her pounce, where she'll try to string you up. That move is frustrating because then everything else will attack you all at once and you take a bunch of damage. But little elbow grease, little gun grease, and some fire, and the Spider Queen is down for the count. We now have everything we need to make our next tier of armor. So I went a little bit of a different path here. I still have to kill every V-Blood carrier for Master of All, but looking at the remaining list, Cyril the Cursed Smith had all the items that were of any import in Act 3. The other 2 remaining Act 3 bosses just didn't really have anything useful that I needed at that time, so for that reason, I went all in on killing Cyril first. His fight was hard, and I lost to him on several occasions, and I'll admit, got rid of the footage of him killing me when he was on 1 HP because I was so pissy about it. I'll admit it. I was pissy and I deleted it. Anyways, his fight's interesting as you have to watch for multiple different things, specifically the banshees he spawns, as well as his illusory weapons. His death gives us access to the final tier in Forge, as well as the ability to make Dark Silver ingots, a prerequisite for Dark Silver weapons, which are needed for the Sanguine weapons, which are then used for the best weapons in the game. Killing Cyril is literally the start of a massive domino effect of progress. Killing him also grants the 2 achievements completing Act 3 and completing Act 3 on Brutal difficulty. Only 2 more brutal achievements left, and one of them is Dracula. Our next 2 V-bosses aren't much to write home about. They are the remaining 2 in Act 3 before we officially move into the final act. I was going to save them for later just so I could continue progressing, but I really wanted the last achievement to be those obtained on the death of Dracula, so I thought, fine, I'll just kill him now. The first is a massive frog by the name of Albert, the Duke of Balaton, and I have nothing to say about this fight. He's a giant frog. Killing him does give you the frog form, which I guess is kind of nifty. The only thing that made this slightly harder was I wasn't really paying attention to the day-night cycle, so I had to fight him during the day. Even that, still pretty simple. I mean, okay, his tongue was a little bit of a problem, but Finally, the last boss of Act 3 that I had to kill was Wilfred the Village Elder. Now, this was a bit of an interesting fight, especially since I had the Blood Moon active. Now, during the day, Wilfred and everyone else in this village are just normal, standard people. Killing Wilfred in human form won't count. You have to wait for it to be night when they all transform into werewolves. Wilfred's sort of big gimmick in the fight is he can spawn humans and then give him the old munch to regain his health. You can kill the humans pretty quickly, though, and halt a lot of his healing potential. With Wilfred's death, this closes the chapter on Act 3, and it's now time to officially move on to Act 4.
I feel strong.
With Act 4 comes a new location, the Silverlight area. This is where the main Church of Luminescence is housed and where our last currency, the Gold Sun coins, will be found and spent. But before any of that happens, we first actually gotta get to the Silverlight area. Upon entering, we get a 2-for-1 bargain with Godless Intrusion for actually entering Silverlight for the first time, but we also receive every corner of the world for venturing into every major region. Keep in mind, this was all recorded before what I had heard was a massive update that's going to be coming out that's actually going to be adding a new region, so just keep that in mind. We now have access to the Silver Mines, which also places us square in the crosshairs of our first Act 4 V-Boss, Sir Magnus the Overseer. What's there to say about this man besides screw his ice attacks? Seriously, he would be able to get himself into little corners and put up these near impenetrable ice walls 2 layers thick, and then basically start to heal himself a little bit. Also, if you haven't guessed, I hate being frozen, and this fat bastard just loves using his little freezing abilities. Anyways, I killed him, but I did get a good amount of help from escaped miners from the mine who seemed more than willing to wail on him a few times.
Knowledge.
The next achievement was just sort of odd that I hadn't done it yet. All you have to do is place a music box and then interact with it. Doing so will get you the Symphony of the Night achievement. we are about to go on a V-Boss murder spree, so get ready. The first on our hit list is going to be Baron du Boucan de Sommelier, and apologies, I'm awful with French. This boss was a laughable joke. I had no issue with him in the slightest, but his death does give us access to Blood Merlot. This is not required to be used, you can just still use blood potions, but it takes less of your prisoner's health when used, as well as lessens the percentage of misery they take. These can be rectified with fish, but by using Blood Merlot, it just means you use less fish. Unlike the good Baron, though, Merwan the Elementalist, Merwin? I don't know, one of the two, was not a cakewalk. Actually, it was the exact opposite. The worst part were her fire tornadoes and this massive sun nova that she would use when she got low enough health that would ultimately kill me in the end. In all honesty, why I didn't use a fire potion at any point, I'm not actually sure, but that is the fun part about doing these editing things. You get to see all your little mistakes after the fact. Also, as an elementalist, she uses ice, so screw you and your frozen bullshit. Anyway, she kills me on the first attempt. I quickly get back in the fight for round 2 and had a better idea of what I was up against. Her attack patterns really weren't that hard to predict, and I can already hear the furious typing of keyboards of commentators going, "But son, why didn't you use any of the shield spells?" And look, guys, there's a super easy solution for this. Much like in how I play my Pokemon games, if it doesn't do damage immediately, I don't want it. Alright, look, now later on I'll actually learn the joy that are these shield spells, but we'll get to that later. You're just going to have to cope with my bad playing style. In attempt number 2, while she did nearly have me again, I was able to eke out the victory before succumbing to any fire, frost, or lightning.
It can't end like this!
Remember how I said that we're on a V-Blood murder spree? Well, it continues with Morian the Stormwing Matriarch. She is a massive harpy that, much like the Baron, is a hilariously easy fight. I'm pretty sure that if I had to take into account power levels of all bosses and sort of mash them all together, she's probably one of the easiest to take out. She does grant the ability to make some useful items upon her death, but if I'm looking at my editing window correctly, this fight took me a literal total of 1 minute 30 seconds to beat. That is absurdly quick. We then go from incredibly easy Stormwing Matriarch to very difficult Henry Blackbrew the Doctor. Now this doctor has to die because he's gatekeeping the last tier of research, and this guy is hard. He's actually the first boss I actively had to go online and learn how to fight. I was just having so many issues with all the projectiles and how to go about simply not getting hit. Especially when his second phase began and the perimeter of the arena had a bunch of electricity everywhere. Anyway, he killed me on the first attempt, and the second, and the third. We take a quick break from the V-Blood death fights to complete another achievement. This time, it's the Collector of Forgotten Lore 2 for getting all the research complete in the study. Alrighty, back to the Doctor for attempt number 4. But this time, I have a new ability in play, Polarity Shift. According to my online sources, that being Reddit, this ability should help when it comes to dodging certain attacks that the Doctor will typically use. I was admittedly a bit skeptical considering I've never actually used this ability before, but somehow, through my great and powerful game knowledge, I was able to take the victory royale and put the Doctor 6 feet under. Tier 3 research? Here we go. Back to the V-Boss slaying, but a few things you should notice. My potions have changed from the brews that I used to use to actual potions. This is because I was able to acquire the necessary research books from the Aethernium, i.e. Tier 3 research. Now these potions came in absolute clutch for the remaining bosses, and you really need to use them. You should not be using the Tier 1 stuff. And speaking of bosses, let's look at this Baba Yaga wannabe, Matka the Curse Weaver. Like many who came before her, I did not find her that difficult, which brings me to an interesting point. The scale and difficulty of some of these bosses is wildly interesting to me. Matka here wasn't an issue at all. The Doctor? kicked my butt. The Baron, absolute pushover. Cyril? I fucking died to him so many times. This may sound like a complaint, but it's not. I actually think this sort of design is very interesting. I'm curious, in the comments below, let me know which bosses you all had issues with. It would be fascinating to see if there's any major differences. Anyways, her death gives us access to Ghost Yarn, a necessary ingredient in future armor. The chopping block don't stop with Matka. We're headed back to the church to take on another one of its members. Azrael the Sunbringer is next up, and once again we have to have a holy potion taken so as to not constantly actually take holy damage. While Azrael is a couple gear levels above me, at 80 I was able to take him on my first try. That being the case though, this was anything but an easy fight, as the reason he had gray numbers appearing above his head when I damaged him was because of that gear score difference. This made it so it took longer than it probably should have. With his death though, that's just another V-Blood domino down. Oh, the other thing is his moveset was super reminiscent of the Shepherd's moves, so it wasn't anything I hadn't seen before. But with his death, we're making some good progress. Ah, Voltatia the Power Master. How I felt a spark between us the first time we met. That spark then turned into 50,000 watts of electricity and cooked my body 3 different times. Also, if that joke didn't make sense, please keep in mind I teach English, not physics. So, at this point, unless I say otherwise, I've been killed by each of these bosses at least 3 different times, because if I showed you every failure, this video would start to get a lot longer. This was also, funny enough, another fight I actually had to go to the all-knowing Reddit to help me with. For whatever reason, when it came down to it, those massive lightning laser beams she would use, no idea what to do about them. Just could not figure out how to get around them. So, I also ended up using Lightning Ball, ironically enough, and it actually really helped. But I also switched to my crossbow that had been upgraded twice, so I was able to get much more damage in than my other weapons. With that, we were able to finally beat her and unlock the ability to make energy cells, an endgame resource necessary to make Onyx Tears, which, well, we'll get to that. Is it? Can it be? Yes! It's Terror Claw the Ogre! Another incredibly frustrating ice boss that just absolutely took me to town. He has multiple moves that freeze on contact, as well as an interesting AoE ability that you have to use the ice pillars he drops on you prior to avoid. Or you can dash through it, honestly, whatever works. As with all things when it comes to the ice-based V-bosses, A, may you be relegated to the pits of hell for which you deserve, and B, I just barely squeaked out a victory, taking a little hit at the end that for a very brief moment in time I thought would kill me. If it had killed me right as I killed him, would not have been a happy camper. Anyways, his death inches us closer and closer to our end goal. Welcome to Castlevania, kids, where Simon Belmont is going to teach you a thing or two about respect. Too bad I was able to humble him the second time around, though. Also, I did not enjoy this fight. Less so because of how difficult it was, and more so because of how everything felt so just random. Like, there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to the attacks, and he would just do stuff and I'd get hit and die. I'm also fairly certain that Simon was added later to the game, and thus I'm not 100% sure if he's needed for the Master of All achievement, but I'd still recommend killing him just in case. The only thing he gives, by the way, is the ability to make sanguine whips. He kicked my butt, I kicked his, we move on. Our next fight is a fun one. This is against Lord Styx, the Knight Champion. He's gatekeeping the ability to fight Dracula, make the best weapons in the game, and the ability to fly like a bat. This is also the first time I use a shield ability, the Ward of the Damned. I chose this one because I like spawning multiple things for the boss to focus on. That's, haha, not me. Also, this was just so good. I loved this ability. I have no idea why I didn't use these shields abilities in the past. But rest assured, you make sure. I'll only use them sometimes in the remainder of this video. Now, Lord Styx himself is a rather straightforward but hard-hitting boss. He doesn't necessarily have any special gimmicks that makes him any more or less annoying to fight. He's just an all-arounder and can kill you via spell or sword. Solid design, 10 out of 10, no notes. He killed me quite a few times, but I was able to take him out in the end. He's actually the one that gatekeeps the Onyx tier, the thing that we needed Voltatia's energy cells for. Now, notice, in the bottom corner, I've got a Sanguine Sword. That's going to change soon because I found a thing. But I needed the Onyx tier to actually make it. And if you know what it is, well, I mean, good on you. But if you don't, you'll see it soon. With the Knight Champion dead and the ability to fly being obtained, we use said bat ability for the first time and are awarded the To the Skies achievement. Now this is where things are going to get a little wonky. We've got 2 more bosses left before we take on the Soul Shard holders. This next boss, General Valencia the Depraved, I kid you not, I beat on the first try. But if I were also to be honest, I absolutely did not deserve that victory. I got punted around so many times and I felt like I was doing so little damage. But, is what it is, a win's a win. General Valencia's main gimmick is that coffin in the middle, and maybe I won because I just simply wasn't caught in it. Well, I was caught in it once. When you are caught within its walls, it does a good deal of damage, but also drains you as part of your blood pool. Get drained to 0, and you start taking dramatically more damage, because no blood, no health. Most of her abilities are designed in a way to push you into that coffin. Well, I, thankfully, was able to beat her, again, somehow, which leaves only 1 boss left before the final 4. Of course, one of those being Dracula himself. Finally, our last boss before the final 4 is Gore Crusher the Behemoth. I'm also sporting my Maleficer armor, which is the 2nd best tier of armor, just under Dracula's armor. I was also, surprisingly, able to actually beat him the first time around, which very much surprised me. He has an interesting gimmick that at half health, he'll spawn an illusion of himself that deals the same amount of damage, and that you just have to simply contend with. You don't actually have to kill it, but it's definitely not a bad idea as it dishes out the same amount of damage. I'm looking back at this footage because I remember fighting him and just going, what am I doing? Like, what is even happening? And as I'm watching this footage back again, my commentary stands. What is going on? I feel like I'm just getting smacked around. I don't really know how I won this, if I'm being perfectly frank with you guys. This whole fight felt like just one massive cluster where I was somehow able to come out on top, but should I have? I don't know. You guys can make that distinction for yourself. Remember that Sanguine Sword I told you to keep an eye on? Well, I got stupid lucky, and while off camera doing a bunch of risked incursions and general farming, I bought a sword fragment that turned into the legendary Gravecaller sword. I will use this weapon to the end of this playthrough. I was able to get the Red Twins fragment from a rift, but otherwise I found no other legendary fragments. I may go back in my free time and try to get them all just for the sake of doing it, but that's neither here nor there. You're here for an achievement. Much earlier, we got an ability to transform into a rat. Well, at the very back of the silver mine, there's a hole that you can fit in as said rat, and doing so awards the achievement, It's a Tight Squeeze. Alrighty, my loyal audience members, it's now time to take on these Soul Shard bosses. And before I make it seem like this was a cakewalk, it was anything but. So let's start off with what apparently the community considers the easiest of the 4, Talzor the Winged Horror. Sure, I can see the argument that people make that once you actually learn how the thing moves and how everything operates, it becomes the easiest to dodge. But I died to him 5 different times. One of those was because I ran out of nighttime and the sun just burned me to death. Alright, so I finally just had to look up a damn video on how to beat this freak of nature. The majority of his attacks aren't that hard to deflect or just simply not deal with, especially once you learn to hug the edge of the arena when he rains down fire. You know what was a massive pain though? The damn crows! These winged little shits were responsible for pretty much every one of my deaths outside of the sun that one time. I don't know what it was. They would be across the arena and then just dash right into me, dealing massive amounts of damage. Good God, it was a pain in my butt. Anyways, when Talzor actually finally dies, we get the first of the 4 soul shards. These shards can be equipped in your amulet slot and give you a different ultimate ability. The thing is that it degrades over time with use, and you have to kill a primal blood soul to recharge it. On PvP servers, it's important to note that the map will always show where the soul shards are, and I believe depending on your PvP settings, there can only be one of each shard in existence at a time, but you would have to correct me. I didn't play PvP. Anyways, 1 down, 3 to go. Up next is Solaris the Immaculate, the original killer of Dracula. And you want to know something hilarious? The winged horror is considered the easiest, but I first tried Solaris. I was incredibly proud of myself, I won't lie to you. So Solaris' attacks are difficult to dodge, but I decided to use a shield ability, and again, it actually did a good deal of work against him. I'm so incredibly proud of myself. He does have one ability that threw me for a bit of a loop. At one point, he's going to spawn a holy angel to fight for him. That angel will deal a good amount of damage to you, but if you kill it, it'll become green and then fight for you. I did not notice this, and I just sort of kept hitting it, even though it was on my team, so to speak. Probably not the nicest thing I could have done, but you know, what was I supposed to do? I also took Talzor's soul shard with me into this battle, and I ended up killing Solaris using that ultimate ability. As you can see on my hotbar, I don't have the spiders equipped. So, 2 down, 2 to go. The next one is Adam the Firstborn, and let me tell you, I'm not looking forward to this fight. But with Solaris' untimely demise, we are awarded 2 more achievements. The first is for completing Act 4, and the second is for completing it on Brutal Difficulty. We only have 1 more Brutal Difficult achievement left, and it's with Big Bad Dracula himself. Let's get our last miscellaneous achievement though. This requires that we complete all Tier 3 research, and in doing so, we are awarded the final collector of Lost Lore number 3. It's time to go face Adam. Arriving at Adam's castle, and we can actually use our bat form to fly over this electrified fence. I thought I was so damn smart and didn't need an EMP, until I got to the main door that clearly requires an EMP. So, hold please. With the EMP set, we can now officially enter Adam the Firstborn's chamber. This fight sucked. Now, I know that's kind of the point, but the whole time it felt incredibly unfair, and as I said, I think that's sort of the point, but my god, did this man being whooped my ass. The first issue, you can clearly see, is the electrified everything. Touching it slows you down, and that can lead to a lot more damage from Adam. Adam's basic attacks were fine enough. They could be dodged or reflected back, nothing too difficult. The issue came when he was able to get a grab on you. That move was so overpowered, good lord. He would chuck you across the map, and then you would be immobilized for a hot second. If you were unlucky enough, you'd get stuck in one of the electricity beams, and then take more damage while he runs you down, and it's just GG from there. I also tended to have a really bad habit of actually just dashing into the electricity beams, which really did not help my survivability. I haven't even spoken about his second phase, but we'll get to that. So anyways, Adam killed me here, and then here. And that second death really stung because I had him in his second phase and nearly dead, but I misplayed and used my little gun ability, and it was just, I'm so angry about it. So this attempt is the one that I won in the end, and let's talk about his second phase. So first comes his first phase, because, well, that's how chronology works, but his second phase begins when his health bar reaches 0. His machine parts break away, and he gets a magic electricity ghost hand. It then feels just like a free-for-all scamper where you are dodging all sorts of electricity projectiles, trying not get zapped by the laser, and also just not get picked up by him. It is truly a hectic time. But in the end, we were finally able to defeat the firstborn son, meaning all we had left was the father of dread himself, the big daddy of all vampires, the immortal King Dracula. So let's talk Dracula, because this boss took me, and I kid you not, 2 hours to beat. If you want to see the full winning run in its entirety, it'll be at the end of the video after my outro, and it's timestamped. But again, let's talk Dracula. So to even be able to fight him, you have to create the blood key, whose crafting recipe you get from beating the Knight Champion. You thankfully don't have to actually have it equipped, it just needs to be in your inventory. You then go to Dracula's castle in the ruins of Morchum and enter the Veiled Door. At the end of the hall lies a black portal that you will activate to start the fight. Side note, developers, thank you so much for this mechanic. It was super useful. When, not if, but when you lose to Dracula, you don't lose any items, and you don't choose where you respawn. You simply respawn outside the black portal. As well, you'll revive with all the blood you entered with. This made losing and trying again so much easier. Also, whoever was the voice actor for Dracula, 10 out of 10. No notes. So how does this fight actually work? Well, I'll be honest. I looked up a video tutorial just to understand the moveset after my 3rd death. In normal mode, Dracula has 2 modes, Armored Mode and Angry Chested Mode. In both of these modes, he is incredibly quick, ruthless, and aggressive. His attacks deal a ton of damage, and if you don't understand the mechanics, you will die. I'll show you in a minute. This is spoken from experience. But if you kill him after phase 2, well, you're good. If you're in normal mode, you've defeated Dracula. If you're in brutal mode, though, you got 2 more modes you have to deal with, so have fun. But let's focus on the first 2 because I kept dying again and again and again and again before I even got to see phase 3 in person. When I say you need to understand the moveset, let's look at this example. This one in phase 2, where he goes in the middle and has the 4 prongs of fire and shoots out the little blood balls at you, I died to this so many times due to simply not understanding how it operated. Really, it was just me being dumb. All you need to do is stay near the edge of the arena and then just dodge, weave, or absorb the bolts. So let's talk phase 3 and 4. Once you've actually been able to whittle down phase 2 to 0 health, phase 3 begins. Here, it's recommended you change spell abilities for AoE purposes, as a bunch of blood shadows will slowly walk towards Dracula. You have to kill them. If you don't, they're gonna heal him. You'll do this until you see the heart of Dracula appear. Wail on it till you're able to consume it, giving you a new blood type, which you will absolutely need for phase 4. In phase 4, well, is a load of hot bullshit is what it is. It's recommended you switch spells again to cloak spells, and you should absolutely do this. The whole fight is the arena closing in, Dracula firing off these blood pulses, and these blood arrows coming at you from every direction every second. Needless to say, this was my first attempt, and I got smacked and sent back to the beginning. I have died a total of 14 times now. I was actually about to throw in the towel and, just say screw it, but why not one last try? Again, if you want to see the full 7-minute fight, it's at the end of this video. I'm just going to show a few highlights. So with that, 14 deaths under my belt, let's try not to make it a 15th.
by my own power.
And with that,
There could be no
14
other
deaths. On the 15th attempt, Dracula, the immortal king, falls to the fangs of Constantine. A fitting end for a valiant foe. His death brings us two things: the end of the game and the final achievements in V Rising. Slayer of the Immortal King for killing Dracula, Brutal Slayer of the Immortal King for killing him on Brutal, and Master of All for drinking every V blood in the game. With those three final achievements in the bag, V Rising has officially been completed. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. I absolutely loved this game. It scratched an itch I honestly didn't even know I had, and now I want more. I am incredibly excited for the new update that'll be coming out at some point that adds a new whole area. Quick housekeeping, I'm having some issues with the Unity Platinum due to the multiplayer trophies. The servers seem to be a little wonky, so I haven't forgotten, I just am trying to figure out what to do with them. But with that, again, thank you all. If you want to see the full 7-minute unedited fight, it'll be right here at the end of this video. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Peace.
Footsteps. An uncommon sound in my timeless domain. My legion stands ready for my return. I will not tolerate this delay. There is no escape from your fate. Kneel to my dominion. On your knees. Kneel and die. Heartbeat of your tomb. You are a shadow, an imitation. This is what it means to be king. I am the relentless force that consumes all. I am the darkness that devours all. Your fate is sealed. The ground weeps sanguine tears. Kneel to my dominion. Witness the might of the true immortal king. Run, youngling. This is eternal power. I'll make it rain blood. Within the mist unseen. No! Impossible! You think you can defeat me? I am inevitable! Not hold me forever. Impossible! How can my own powers betray me? I am the master of blood and shadows! I am the master of blood and shadows! Defeated by my own power. There could be no other way.
I feel stronger. Yet another accomplishment.